By 1865, 600,000 Americans were dead. The country had spent 4 years killing itself, and the survivors were left trying to figure out what to think now. Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. had been wounded 3 times, at Ball's Bluff, Antietam, and Chancellorsville. He returned from the war questioning the ideological carnage he had witnessed. Holmes was pushing against an inherited tradition that promised absolute certainty. Figures like Descartes and Hegel described truth as a static, indubitable correspondence between the mind and the world. Holmes doubted the very kind of certainty that made the killing possible. He later wrote that certitude is not the test of certainty, observing that men have been cocksure of many things that were simply not true. Traditional philosophy promised a level of certainty it couldn't safely deliver. Society needed a new way to measure reality, one that didn't rely on the absolute conviction that so often leads to violence. In January 1872, a group of Harvard-trained men began meeting in a Cambridge parlor to argue about philosophy. They called themselves, half ironically, the Metaphysical Club. These men asked if it was possible to think clearly about what an idea means without anchoring it in that old, static kind of certainty. By trying to solve the specific, bloody problem of absolute certainty, they were building a new framework for thinking: pragmatism. The logician and chemist Charles Sanders Peirce gave the first answer. In 1878, he published what he called the pragmatic maxim. Imagine a diamond that forms inside soft cotton. It is never touched, and then it's destroyed. Was it actually hard? Peirce argued there is no difference between a hard thing and a soft thing as long as neither is brought to the test. The meaning of any concept lies entirely in its practical consequences. If a claim makes no difference to our expectations or our actions, the claim is empty. William James took Peirce's rule about meaning and applied it to the concept that had organized Western thought since Plato: truth. James used a squirrel to illustrate the point. Suppose you walk around a tree, but a squirrel on the trunk keeps moving to the far side. Did you go around the squirrel? 2 people could argue about this forever. James said the answer depends on your practical definition. If going around means passing north, east, south, and west, yes. If it means passing in front of, beside, and behind the animal, no. The dispute dissolves into a question of utility. Truth is what an idea earns by being useful. A true belief survives challenge, fits with our other beliefs, and helps us act. For James, verification is truth. It happens to an idea in the course of its career. John Dewey gave the program a social and political life, moving it from the parlor into the public sphere. For Dewey, thinking starts when habit fails. Inquiry is the work of finding a new way when our usual methods stop working. Knowledge is the product of that effort, not its precondition. Dewey applied this to democracy, framing it as a community of inquiries solving shared problems in every institution, from schools and workplaces to neighborhoods. Dewey's work dismantled the wall between theory and practice. We know by doing, turning truth into a living tool for fixing broken societal habits. Bertrand Russell saw this as a slide into self-flattery. He conceded that consequences help test theories, but he denied that utility is what truth means. Russell used Santa Claus as a test. A child receives genuine comfort from believing in Santa, and that comfort would count toward the belief's truth under James's rules. But Santa Claus does not exist. Russell called this cosmic impiety, the conviction that man, rather than the world, is the measure of what is so. He argued pragmatists confused a criterion for finding truth with the definition of truth itself. James responded, no belief is wholly true if it clashes with the broader run of experience, because any belief we act on over time eventually meets the physical world that has to support it. Consider the beliefs you rely on to organize your life, about your own talents, the worth of your work, or the people you love. These deeply held beliefs survive challenges and predict how things go often enough that you keep relying on them. Is that enough to make them true? Or do you ultimately need them to be true regardless of what they do for you?